And we are back with my final ever FIFA video. You know, like, unless we do like a retro one at this time next year or something. But of course, we are moving to EA Sports FC. The FIFA brand will no longer exist within the EA Sports community. So, to celebrate the final ever video of FIFA, today's task is to build my ultimate Hall of Fame FIFA Ultimate Team. Now, if you missed last week's video, I built up a team of all of my favourite players from FIFA 23. And like I just said, the task today is to build my Hall of Fame for the entirety of FIFA Ultimate Team. Now, of course, these are purely my opinions. You will have much different players that will go into your teams, but grab the popcorn, grab some tissues, because things might start getting emotional as we flash back to players you probably completely forgot even existed over the course of however long this one's going to go. But today we are building the final ever FIFA team. But before we get into it, the first crime of today is that we cannot build this squad on Futhead. Now, for those of you who don't know Futhead were basically the pioneers of squad building when it came to FIFA Ultimate Team in like FIFA 12, FIFA 13. Back then, the likes of FUTBin, FUTWiz weren't a thing, and they basically copied and then improved on the model of Futhead, but we were all there in the early days of FIFA Ultimate Team, building our squads on Futhead, sharing them around with our friends. Everything was on Futhead, and it's such a shame that for the final ever FIFA video where we're building one last FIFA squad that we can't build it on Futhead. So, RIP Futhead, you will long be missed. But sadly, we cannot do it on there. So what we will be doing instead is doing it on FUTBin as we skip over to the squad and we get ready for the video. Now, the formation I'm choosing is 4-3-3-4. That is the formation that I ended up using the most in my FIFA career, I would say. It's transitioned from here to a 4-3-3-2 in now modern times, as it were. But for the vast majority of my FIFA Ultimate Team career, 4-3-3-4 was my formation. It's the one I got the most wins with. It's the one I got my first ever top 100 with. And it's what I got the majority of my Division 1 wins. So we're going for a 4-3-3-4, and we are kicking things off in goal. And the way this video is going to work is I'm going to show you a whole bunch of nominations down in the bottom, and then we're going to pick from those nominations my top goalkeeper, my top right back, top centre backs, etc, 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 until we have built the whole team. So let's start off with that goalkeeper position, and these are the nominations that I've gone for. Now, the reason I've included Dida is just to reiterate the point that this is strictly going to be Ultimate Team. So I've put Dida in here to represent the FIFA Street, original 2004 FIFA Street version of Dida, who was an absolute broken joke of a goalkeeper when it came to FIFA Street. But this is the whole point. He is not going to be included because then I'd have to include the likes of 2003 Matteo Brighi. If you know, you know. And so on and so on. This video could be going on for like 2 or 3 hours. We talk about all the players from like FIFA World Cup 2006, all the FIFA Street cards, all of the Virtual Pro cards from early iterations of FIFA before Ultimate Team kicked in. We're not going to do that. So we're going to get rid of Dida. Bye-bye. And we're purely going to focus on Ultimate Team. And these are the goalkeepers I've chosen. Now, there's only actually 6 that I've picked. That's because for the vast majority of Ultimate Team, there has really only been one goalkeeper for me. But I have to include Jack Butland. Disgusting! Absolute nightmare to play against, as we all know, and obviously ended up getting that footies card at the end of that year. I've gone for Team of the Year Donnarumma from, I think it was last year. Absolutely incredible card once again. Sadly, not as good this year, in my opinion. I know a lot of people have still gone for him. I know his 99 version is much better than this version ever was. But this is the version for me that stuck out. I've gone for Manuel Neuer, essentially all versions of Neuer, but this one in particular, FIFA 15 Team of the Year, was always my favourite. Rogerio Ceni, again, if you know, you know. If you don't know, this is the man who used to take free kicks and penalties for Sao Paulo back in the day, and he scored over 100 goals in his career, which meant that on FIFA, he had high 70s free kicks and mid-80s penalties. So I used to have him as my Brazil goalkeeper when I used to run Brazil squads, and best believe he used to take all my free kicks and penalties, and he was absolutely fantastic. We've got ter Stegen, again, a very consistent goalkeeper on FIFA over the course of the last few years. I've picked this version out as what I think was his best ever version. And then, of course, we have Edwin van der Sar. Most pro players choice when it comes to goalkeepers. I've not used him as much as I would have liked over the course of the last few years, purely because he's too expensive. I've gone for this year's Team of the Year version of Van der Sar because it seems to have been better than all of the other previous versions of him. However, if you didn't guess it from the fact that I mentioned it was going to be an equivalent of all of his versions earlier on when I talked about him, my goalkeeper for the all-time FIFA Hall of Fame is Manuel Neuer. On to the right backs then, and this is where we're going to start really having some reminiscing. So if we bring these ones up here, I'm not really going to talk massively about every single player, otherwise this video will be several hours long, but a brief rundown of players that you may have forgotten about over the last few years. Abate, an absolute joke of a starter card, and basically played for the majority of people's teams back in FIFA 12, FIFA 13. Hector Bellerin's team of the season with the 98 pace, one of the best Premier League right backs we've ever seen. More recent card in terms of Cafu, ever since he's been introduced as an icon, and then he got those SBC cards last year and this year. Incredible card. Dani Alves, this was my favourite version of Dani Alves. I know he's had better versions and different versions over the course of the year, but that original Team of the Year Dani Alves will always stand out for me. This Informed Debussy, now there's only 2 people in the world that know why this Informed Debussy is in there, but basically the year that this card came out, everyone was running Cristiano Ronaldo at left wing, and for whatever reason, this Debussy just stopped him. Florenzi, the Path to Glory or the Road to the Final card, really, really good. Again, a consistent player over the course of several iterations of Ultimate Team and thoroughly deserves his nomination. Philipp Lahm, in particularly this End of an Era card. I don't think any of the versions of Lahm that they've brought out since he's been an icon can even touch this End of an Era Philipp Lahm card. An absolutely staggeringly good card at the back end of that FIFA. And then in the reserves, we have got Maicon for his Manchester City / Inter Milan / Roma cards at the start of early FIFA. The Freight Train, as I like to call him. Then Lucas Piszczek for some of his cards over the course of the years where you had that Dortmund perfect link lineup from Piszczek to Blaszczykowski to Lewandowski. So many people running those cards in the early years. And then, of course, Aubameyang and Royce as it carried on across as well. Dario Serna was a very good card, but didn't really come into fruition until the Chem glitch came out. If you remember the Chem glitch, remember to comment that one down in the comments. But yeah, Dario Serna, phenomenal right-back card. Hard to get into teams until, of course, the Chem glitch became a thing. Zabaleta, only really included because he got in my Hall of Fame team for the year that this card came out. Really, really solid card, though. He also had a very nice flashback and international man of the match card at some points as well. And then finally, the prime Javier Zanetti. If you missed my video last week, it's not a party until Zanetti scores. Sadly, Zanetti did not score for me last week. And in terms of who I'm actually going to go for, it's actually between Zanetti and Maicon as I'd go for as my top choice for my all-time right back. However, the man that set the standard has to be Maicon. I'm putting him as my right back. I really, really wanted to go for Zanetti, but every single right back I've used on FIFA. If you missed my Hall of Fame video last week, I picked Denzel Dumfries as my right back. Shock horror, the tall, physical Inter Milan right back, because every right back I've used on FIFA has had to live up to Maicon, and quite frankly, so far, no one has. Moving on to the centre-backs then, and this is where things are going to start getting quite controversial because this is where a lot of exclusions are going to have to be made. Now, yes, once again, I have my subs and I have my reserves, but that is definitely not going to cover every single centre-back that I have used, and it's certainly not going to cover every centre-back that you have used. If you haven't noticed already, I'm ordering these by alphabetical order, so immediately you'll notice that I've not even included Virgil van Dijk in any of my nominations.
Wait, that's illegal.
Take into that what you will. I know a lot of people love Van Dijk on this game, but this is my video, these are my players, and this is what I'm going for.
Ooh, you're hard.
Firstly, Beckenbauer. I'm gutted we've not seen him back since Legends got removed, but Beckenbauer was so good as a player that you can play in a back three or move into CDM. Absolute joke of a card. Mehdi Benatia, a man who, in my opinion, ended his high-level career far too soon. He had one of the best cards in FIFA for about 4 or 5 years, and I absolutely loved this card. Jerome Boateng, again, a player that sort of encapsulates several years of FIFA, but for me, the best version of the card was the flashback version. Dante from Bayern Munich, that version of him, again, an absolute joke of a card. I love a left-sided centre-back in my teams, and there was no better left-sided centre-back, and I say this right here, right now. There has never been a better left-sided centre-back than that Dante card right there. David Luiz, I've gone for the flashback version. I was very tempted to go for the 79 rated Chelsea card, but I think the flashback David Luiz will never be topped in terms of an actual centre-back from that sort of time period. Felipe Santana, again, if you know, you know. If you don't, this card was like the absolute most broken centre-back on the game for a solid 2 years, especially while he was at Borussia Dortmund, because again, he then lent links to the likes of that Piszczek, Blaszczykowski, Lewandowski, Aubameyang, etc., etc., etc. Diego Godin, an absolute solid centre-back. If you actually type in Godin and look at how many cards that this man has had over the course of the last few years, every single one of those cards up to here are Diego Godin cards, and he has been absolutely sensational year in, year out. After him, we have then got Hong Jong-ho, just a personal favourite of mine, probably my favourite ever silver centre-back. I just thought he was worth mentioning. Lucio from this year, my most capped player ever with over 1,000 games on him. Maldini, again, an absolute fan favourite, an incredible performer, year in, year out on Ultimate Team. Some people play him at left back now that you've got those position modifiers available to you as well. Miranda, the partner to Diego Godin. I've gone for the Inter Milan version just because this was the best version of Miranda in my opinion. But for so many years, I had that partnership of Miranda and Godin as my Atletico Madrid defence. And then, of course, what centre-back list would not be complete without Sergio Ramos? I actually think this version of Ramos is the best ever version of Ramos we've had in terms of how early we got this card above the rest of the meta base. Now, obviously, when Ramos was just a standard 89, 90 rated card, he was already the best player in the game. But to get a card like this, where there weren't that many good centre-backs early on this year, I actually think this Ramos was the one that stands out above the rest. However, I can only pick two from that list. And like I said, if your favourite centre-back hasn't made it onto the nominations, please let me know down in the comments. But the two centre-backs that I am going to go for are going to be Diego Godin for absolute non-stop consistency for so many years, and Jerome Boateng because he is just my favourite centre-back in FIFA history. He's ever present. He's ever consistent. He's constantly had that perfect link to Manuel Neuer. Now, obviously, chemistry has changed from what it is on this screen right now. But for so many years, I could just whack that Neuer to Boateng perfect link in and build my rest of the team from there. So for that reason, and that reason alone, Jerome Boateng gets in the all-time Hall of Fame. On to the left backs then, and this is one of the positions that's not really up for debate for me. I am not going to reveal who it is until I've gone to the nominations, but this one is an absolute no-brainer. Firstly, you've got Marcos Acuna. Very, very good card. A very recent card. There wasn't much talk about Acuna until about 2 or 3 years ago in the FIFA community when they just started giving him cards. Now, of course, he is a mainstay. He almost went to Aston Villa on deadline day, which would be a good signing for them. He's an 85 rated left back now. He used to be a left mid, left wing. Then he got this showdown card, which redefined the position of left back for him and was one of my favourite ever left back cards. Alexandro, another absolute mainstay of FIFA teams for a solid 6 or 7 years. I think the flashback version was probably the best version of him, but when you had the 84s, 85 rated versions of Alexandro just as standard in the Juventus lineups, he was so good. Leighton Baines, one of the most underrated left backs, England players, whatever you want, of the last 20 years. Sadly in the shadow of Ashley Cole for his entire career, but such a good card on FIFA. One of the best free kick takers we've ever had in FIFA history, and this version thoroughly deserves its nomination. Bremer, again, I'm hoping we're going to see Bremer very, very soon. I've seen rumours he might be in EA Sports FC, but I've not seen the full confirmation list just yet, but I hope he is.
No.
Two-footed. He had the best penalty stat of any player on these versions of FIFA, and in real life, he literally would take penalties with both feet, which is just crazy to think about. Really, really good card. One of the best left-backs I've ever used. Gael Clichy, similar to the Abate one we had earlier. So consistent as a starter card. With that pace, with the Man City and French links, really, really useful. Felipe Luis completing off my Atletico Madrid set of Miranda, Godin, and of course Felipe Luis, getting that perfect link to Miranda at times as well. Very, very consistent card for many, many years. Robin Gosens, in my opinion, the best objective card of all time. Got in my Hall of Fame last week, but sadly will not be making it into my Hall of Fame this week. Continuing on, you then have Teo Hernandez. In my opinion, probably the best left back we've ever had on FIFA. Just an absolute joke of a card. And this one in particular had 4-star as well. So just a ridiculous player. Kolarov, because I like fullbacks that can shoot and ones that are physical. I never really got on with Roberto Carlos, which is why he's not made this list. But Kolarov was always fantastic for me. Marcelo, again, an argument for the best ever left back we've seen on FIFA with the 5-star skill. This Team of the Year version absolutely set the standard for that sort of season. Marcos Alonso, my most capped card until Lucio. This road to the final card, probably the best SBC card we've ever had. That might be slightly controversial, and we'll talk about some other SBC cards later on. But in my opinion, the best SBC we have ever had. Starting off as an 84, going all the way up to 91. Maintained his spot in the meta throughout the entire season. And then finally, Michel Bastos, who you probably think, why the hell has he been included at left back? He's a left mid. Basically, again, there were no Roberto Carlos cards at the start of FIFA unless you wanted to use a 79 rated 50 pace CDM. So Michel Bastos used to play left back for Brazil for a period of time, and they never gave him a left back card on FIFA. So I just played him off chem at left back and just pretended he was Roberto Carlos, and he was absolutely phenomenal. However, my choice has to be Marcos Alonso. As I said, my second most capped player ever, the best SBC ever in my opinion. And I just don't think there's been a better left back for absolute longevity over the course of an entire season. Into the midfield then. And the way I'm going to do this is I'm going to have a CDM, I'm going to have a CM, and then I'm going to have a CAM. Well, obviously, you can't do that in one formation, but I feel like it's worth talking about each player individually. Now, if you know me and if you've watched my videos over the last couple of weeks, you're probably going to guess all three of my midfielders before I even start doing this. But again, this is just a bit of fun. It's about reminiscing. And then when I inevitably pick those players, you're not going to be surprised. So let's talk through my CDM nominees. We'll start off with Alan, a player that absolutely fizzled out his career after moving from Napoli to Everton. Such a shame for him, but one of the best FIFA cards we've ever seen. And then when he got this Team of the Season version, probably the best centre mid / CDM on the game that year. Next to him, I've gone for Gareth Barry. Now, as much as that makes me want to throw up for picking Gareth Barry in my nominations for the all-time FIFA Hall of Fame, the only reason I'm doing this is because he scored the goal that got me a top 100 finish in the first ever FUT Champions Weekend League. Now, I will always consider that a phenomenal achievement. There is only 200 players that got in the first ever top 100, 100 on Xbox, 100 on PS4, I think it was at the time. I was one of those who was able to get in the first ever top 100 on Xbox, and Gareth Barry scored the goal that got me there in the final game. So he will always have a place in my heart in terms of the card, even though I cannot stand the player IRL. Next to him, Daniele De Rossi. Don't think I need to say too much about him. Again, one of the most consistent CDMs in FIFA history, and this was just the best version I could think of for him. I know he had some of those flashback cards, end of an era cards, but for me, this Team of the Season was the one that stood out the most. Michael Essien, I've gone for his previous Chelsea cards over his icon cards. I think because the meta has shifted so much over the last few years and the fact that icons actually become outdated so quickly, I think Michael Essien gets left behind quite quickly in iterations of FIFA now, whereas back in the day where all you really had was inform cards and then Team of the Year, a Michael Essien card like this was a top-end player for the course of the entire year and thoroughly deserves his nomination. N'Golo Kante, again, I could talk about so many versions of Kante, but I've gone for this one just because look how cute he is with that Player of the Year trophy.
Why are you gay?
Thoroughly deserved that trophy as well, and what a great card and what a great CDM N'Golo Kante has been for so many years. Conrad Lima, I've gone for next. I've put him in the CDM position where I could have put him in the right back position. For those of you who don't know, in FIFA 21, I put Conrad Lima as a CDM in my starting squad and then swapped him in-game with a right back and then sort of played the right back in CM and then Lima at right wing back. And he was absolutely phenomenal, so he gets his spot in CDM for that reason. Luis Gustavo.
And I don't care what you say, he is the GOAT.
I've gone for his FUTties version, but every single version of Gustavo has been my absolute favourite player in holding midfield. And do you know what? I'm just going to put him in there now. We know it's Gustavo that's going to get in the squad. In terms of other ones that I could have gone for, Palinha was phenomenal and was my favourite CDM of this year. Rijkaard, for about 2 or 3 years, was my top CDM. But again, sort of what I'm saying in regards to how icons just get phased out too quickly nowadays. I think Rijkaard doesn't quite make it. This end of an era, Sergio Busquets, was an absolute joke of a card this year and again deserves his nomination alongside Palinha this year in terms of CDMs. I think if this card came out a little bit earlier on in the year, he probably would have got the Hall of Fame spot over Palinha because he's just that good. Arturo Vidal, another contender for a year in, year out performer. Just so consistent and, again, very deserving of his nomination. And finally, I've gone for the Legends Vieira. Now, this may come as a shock to you considering how much FIFA I play, But this is the only version of Vieira I have ever owned.
What?
I've never had a base Vieira. I've never had a mid Vieira. I've never had a prime Vieira. I didn't do the World Cup Vieira this year. And I never had a Moments Vieira. This is the only Vieira I have ever owned, and it was from FIFA 15. He was an absolute joke of a card, but just due to the fact that SBCs and value of the player and the fact that I've never packed him, since he's been an icon, I have never used Vieira outside of draft. So maybe if I had, he may have taken Luis Gustavo's spot overall. I'm sure he'd be most other people's choice for the best CDM we've ever had on FIFA. But for me, it has to be Luis Gustavo, just because he has been so consistent for so many years for me. On to the centre mids then, and immediately you will notice that I have included a couple of cams in this list of options, but that's because, again, I'm the sort of player that has a CDM and then a cam as my two CMs, and then have an outright agile cam in the actual cam spot. So you will see a couple of cams in here thinking like, why is he putting cams in the CM spot? It's just how I operate, all right? So the first one of those is Kevin Prince Boateng. Again, from FIFA 12 and FIFA 13, the Schalke and the Bayern Munich cards that this guy had were an absolute joke. One of the best cards, I think, in those years where, again, this was a high-end card. You didn't get 97, 98 rated cards back in those days. An 85 rated card is like the equivalent of a 92 rated card now. And this Kevin Prince Boateng just dominated midfields back in the day. Kevin De Bruyne, again, I could have picked multiple versions of this card. However, I have gone for his League SBC version. Back in the day when League SBCs were purely you complete the League SBC once and you just get a nice card at the end of it. This version of De Bruyne played the most games for me in terms of all of the Kevin De Bruyne cards. Always, again, in that centre mid spot. Even though he has cards with like 80 plus defending nowadays, this was the one that played in centre mid for me. Hernandez, an absolute legend of a card. If you don't know Hernandez, he just had phenomenal skills, phenomenal shooting, 5-star weak foot. Again, physical wasn't a stat back then, but he was very physical in game as well. And just scored so many goals with this card. He had free kicks, like I say, skills, shooting, passing. He was the cornerstone of so many of my Serie A teams in the early versions of FIFA. And I've gone for the FIFA 15 version here. Ruud Gullit. Very few people actually play Ruud Gullit in the centre-forward position. Most play him at CDM or as CM. For me, he was a CM. I only really got to use him for a couple of years. So he deserves his nomination just because he is probably the best centre-mid in FIFA history. However, again, I didn't quite use him enough to get his spot in the overall team. Jorginho's Team of the Year from a couple of years ago. Brilliant card. Just phenomenal. Say what you want about why he got the card and whether or not he deserved it and how good he actually is now. You cannot take anything away from this card. I played over 500 games with him, and he probably was the best centre mid I used that year and one of the best centre mids I've used ever. Same goes for this Joshua Kimmich card. Again, basically in the same model as this Jorginho. It's just Kimmich came a little bit later in that year because he was a team of the season. I think this is from FIFA 19, maybe FIFA 20. I can't remember. There's so many FIFAs. They all sort of blur together. But again, Kimmich set the standard that year, as did Marquisio. You can see a sort of theme going here about, I like players that drive and have a little bit of everything. 4-star, can shoot, can pass, can tackle. That's sort of what I get from my centre mids. And Marquisio has always encapsulated that. Again, I've opted to go for a previous version of Marquisio rather than any of the hero versions we've had of him this year. Because as much as I've liked the hero versions of Marquisio this year, back in the day, this 89 version of Marquisio stood out above other cards, whereas the versions of Marquisio this year have basically just been another centre mid in a long list of centre mids that you could have there. Then we have Milinkovic-Savic. I kind of really struggled to find some long-term nominations for this, so that's why Milinkovic-Savic is in there. Again, solid player, but basically just a B-Tech Gullit. Luka Modric is going straight in the team. That is my choice for top centre mid. He is also my pick for the best, or my favourite ever FIFA card. He's got the most Hall of Fame appearances for me. He's been in 5 separate Hall of Fames for me, Luka Modric. He is the best FIFA card for me.
That's why he's the GOAT! The GOAT!
And I'm so glad he was able to win a Ballon d'Or and get a 99 rated card, because he's always deserved one. And yeah, that is my favourite ever FIFA card, the 99 version of Modric. Nainggolan, the originator of Nainggolan Gang, the first ever card to have all 90s as base stats. Phenomenal, broken card. Could literally play him anywhere. I ended up playing him as a centre mid because, of course, I did. Why wouldn't I? If I've got a 90s in all-round stats, I'm obviously going to play him as my box-to-box player. Yaya Toure, again, not really used any of the hero versions of Yaya this year, but this 86 version was an absolute joke. And then finally, the flashback Axel Witsel from a few years ago. I basically used him the same way I used Lima, whereby I started him at centre mid, moved him to right back for a spell. Then I ended up moving him into the centre mid spot full time. And I just absolutely love this card. But sadly, they are all shadows of Luka Modric, who set the standard for me year in, year out. Every single one of these cards, I have tried to emulate how I used to use Modric. And sadly, none of them really have come close. Jorginho probably came the closest, but not a single one of them could touch this Luka Modric. On to the cam spot, and this is where we start to reminisce a hell of a lot more, because as I've said to you, over the last few years, I've actually moved away from using a cam. I now use a 4-3-3-2 rather than a 4-3-3-4. So the majority of these cams are going to be from classic FIFAs. So, like I say, if some of these players are a little bit new to you, get to know them, because back in the day, man, some of these cards were an absolute joke. Obviously, we have to talk about Alawiran. He is, without doubt, the top card from this year's FIFA, and I'm including him at cam because I have played him at cam a few times this season, but obviously he can play right wing, left wing, or striker, but he deserves his spot just because of how good his card is this year. Then we move on to the historical players. Unbark Boussoufa, if you missed, I put a clip of him in my video a couple of weeks ago.
Great opportunity. And he's put it in for the goal.
And he'll have enjoyed that. Don't think he scored many better. The composure to place it to the left.
One of the OG 5-star skillers from the Russian league, and we'll get to another Russian league player in a moment, but basically, you could just do so many fun things with Russian league players back in the day, and Mbark Boussoufa was just one of those guys. Next to him, we have Danny, again, Russian league cam, again, 5-star skill. Just had so much fun. This is when FIFA really was just for fun, where the only thing that mattered was Division 1, and you didn't have to sweat about foot champs and division rivals, and if you lost, it didn't matter. If you won, you just have fun. If guys had a god squad, who cared? You were just messing around with 5-star skill Russian league players, and yeah, gone are the days where you could just rock up with Danny and Boussoufa, but man, I absolutely loved those times. Same with Diego. I used to use Diego in the same teams I used to use Hernandez in. He was more for skills and then again shooting. Again, this guy had like 90 free kicks or something. Brilliant, brilliant card. Some of the best long shots I've ever seen in FIFA. I could have picked a few different versions of him, but I've gone for the Wolfsburg version because, again, we talked about that team with Piszczek, Blaszczykowski, blah, 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 blah. Diego was then in the centre of that team. Paulo Dybala, a more recent one, the centre-forward moments card from a couple of years ago. I moved him into the cam position back then. Brilliant, brilliant card. Not going to make it into the Hall of Fame team, but thoroughly deserves his spot in the nominations. Roberto Firmino, another guy that I have had so many iterations of. So underrated on FIFA, in my opinion, Firmino. He always gets himself some fantastic cards, but you barely ever came up against him. So I'm glad that I was able to use him a lot. Again, like I say, I'm someone who loves a cam. I'm someone who loves a 5-star skill cam. And this Firmino, with his ability and the high work rates, so good. The man that comes runner-up for the cam spot is this James Rodriguez. One of the boys, as I called them, the Falcao, Cavani, James trio from FIFA 14. My favourite ever front three as an absolute unit in a 3-5-2. I wish I could put him in this team, but sadly, he is just going to narrowly miss out. Into the reserves then, we have Thomas Muller. Again, just a consistent player for me. Played in that same team with Boateng in the Bundesliga. I used to play a 4-3-2-1, where the midfield three was Gustavo, obviously, as we've talked about. The Boateng we talked about, and then Muller. That was my three, and they were absolutely phenomenal. Samir Nasri, just so hard to play against in early games of FIFA. Again, remember what I said, an 85 rated card back then is like a 92 rated card now. He would rip defenses to absolute shreds. One of my favourite ever cards, and I'm so pleased that I actually own this card, It is the record breaker Wayne Rooney card for when he broke the all-time goal-scoring record of Bobby Charlton for Manchester United. This is when he scored that free kick against Stoke, and they gave him this special card. And I was fortunate enough to pack this card first owner, so I'm so pleased I have it. That's why he gets the nomination. Rui Costa, he's the man that goes in the team. My favourite ever cam. One of the best SBCs again. Back in the day when they did these Icon SBCs, they used to be like 1 million coins. Then they dropped this Rui Costa for like 250k, and he was so good. So many people hated him, but I absolutely loved him. And year in, year out, ever since this Rui Costa card came out, I've used him, and every single year for me, he has been fantastic, and that is why he gets the Hall of Fame spot. And finally, Wesley Sneijder, someone that we're going to be getting next year. Can't wait to try him out. Again, like I say, an 87 back in those days. You're talking about a really high-end card. 4-star skill, 5-star weak foot, some of the best shooting you've ever seen, some of the best dribbling you've ever seen. He had 88 passing as standard as well. 66 defending on a cam is very rare back in those days as well. I absolutely loved Sneijder. He was in the same team as Maicon when they both had the Inter Milan cards. And I just cannot wait to try out Wesley Sneijder next year. On to the front three then, and we'll start off with the right wingers. And this is probably where things are going to get even more controversial, because I'm going to tell you at the top of this section right now, Lionel Messi's not even in the nominations.
Sorry, what?
Starting off, I've gone for Antonio Candreva. Again, this is all alphabetical, so this is why we're doing this. Candreva, back in the day, if you haven't told from the players that I've included so far, I really like long shots and I really like free kick takers. And Candreva was just one of those players who I could absolutely smash it with from about 45 yards back in those days, and they would fly in.
You look at the ref and his view, he was right on top of it, so he knew what he wanted to do there.
Oh, that's a great goal, straight from the free kick.
Jefferson Farfan, possibly the greatest ever dribbler on FIFA for me. And what I mean by dribbler is I don't mean skills. I mean I could pick the ball up with him on the halfway line and just run at people. And I would just jink in and out, just sprinting and turning.
A little bit naughty, that.
So physical, so powerful. One of the best finishers in FIFA history. One of the best wingers in FIFA history. And it's such a shame that, realistically, he's probably never going to get an icon or a hero card because he doesn't really deserve one. But he'll always have a special place in my heart. I absolutely love Jefferson Farfan. Achraf Hakimi, I've then gone for there. Now, if you missed last week's video, of course, I put Hakimi as my right mid in the Hall of Fame this year. Basically, this Hakimi card was the regen of this Farfan card.
Really good attacking play. Oh, splendid skill. He's in behind. And another one! 2 quick goals! Will it turn out?
The way I used him was exactly the same. Pick the ball up on the halfway line, drive at goal. Obviously, back in these days with this Farfan card, you didn't have chemistry styles. So I give this Hakimi a finisher, and he's basically this Jefferson Farfan card. That's sort of how it worked. This is why I loved Hakimi. He was the first player in a very long time to give me those Farfan vibes. So that's why Hakimi gets his nomination. Then we have Hulk. Don't think I need to say too much about him. One of the best FIFA players ever. Possibly the biggest FIFA player ever. I know they gave Akinfenwa his body type in the end, but back in the day, there wasn't a player that was bigger than Hulk. And look at that, 96 physical on this card, 98 shooting. And this is back in a time where they didn't give out these sort of stats on cards. So this is a 90 rated card. You saw a card with these stats today, this would have a 96 or a 97 on it for these sort of stats. So really happy with this Hulk card. Lamela was an unfortunate victim of being in the same position as Farfan back in the day where you couldn't play players on both sides. You just sort of had to suck it up and play them off chem. It did allow you to do it. You could play a right winger at left wing and they would get some chemistry, but Yeah, love this Lamella card. An OG 5-star skiller. Again, a very good free kick taker. Lucas Moura. I could have picked so many versions of Lucas Moura, but I've gone for the FIFA 14 version just because of this goal.
One of the 16 will feel that they've got a chance of the trophy itself. Well, are they going for power from long range? And what a shot!
And yeah, so many memories of him. He was one of the first players we picked up every single year. So linkable to so many other good players as well. Great for Brazil squads, great for French League squads. And sadly, we will not be seeing any more of him as he has now gone back to Brazil. So farewell, Lucas Moura. Thanks for the memories. And hopefully we'll see some sort of version of you at one point very, very soon. Luis Figo, again, could have picked several versions of him, but I've gone for the FIFA 15 Legends version of him. I actually built an entire Legends squad that year in FIFA 15 when it was very unheard of to actually make full Legend teams back in the day. And Luis Figo was just a very good card back then. I've used his icon versions. They've also been very good, and that's why he gets nominated. Other right wingers, I've gone for Mahrez. Again, very, very consistent year in, year out. This version was probably my favourite version of him, though. The Leicester title-winning team of the season version of Mahrez. Be interested to see what sort of card they give him in the Saudi League this year and how many promo cards he'll end up picking up. But always loved Mahrez cards. Always had a lot of fun with him. The other one I've gone for here is the FUT Birthday Marcelo. I think it's from, is it FIFA 20, this version? I can't remember. There's so many different versions. I think it's the FIFA 20 version of Marcelo. His second nomination, but sadly he will be missing out once again. But this was such a fun card. I could just play it out to him in the right wing. Basically used him like I used Mahrez. Skills, physicality, shooting, finesse shots, whatever you want. Such a fun card. And I love when they do things like this, where it's just like, it's a fun game. We're just going to give random players these random position changes. For me, that's a bit of fun. And I love this Marcelo. Palacio is in here for the same reason as James was in there for a previous squad. I had a different front three of Palacio, Giovinco and Di Natale. And if I could give them their own Hall of Fame spot, I would. So that is why Palacio is nominated. Politano gets here as the first storyline card. Really, really, really good card this. The 87 probably got more plaudits than the 89. I think, like I say, it was the first ever storyline card, so a lot of people did this Politano and then moved away from him once they completed him. But for me, he remained a very good player for the majority of the rest of that FIFA, and it's a shame that less people realise that. And then finally, there was a Quincy Promes, who we can't really talk about because of, you know, the... But that League SBC Quincy Promes was absolutely nuts. Anyway, we're not going to go for Quincy Promes. We're not going to go for any of the others. We're going to go for Jefferson Farfan. I bigged him up the most. I don't think you're going to be too surprised that I've gone for him. And like I said, up until Hakimi, no one had matched him. And I'm not going to put a right back as my right winger in the all-time Hall of Fame. I'm obviously going to go for the OG top right winger of all time, which is Jefferson Farfan. 2 positions to go. We have the left wing and the striker. And I have to be honest with you, the left wing was probably the hardest position to choose because there weren't many standout players to go for. It would be obvious to just say, oh, I'm going to go Ronaldinho because Ronaldinho was the absolute best and the 94 rated prime and the 95 moments and the team of the year and the 98, 99 card from it. But I just don't think I used him enough to merit the spot to go in left wing. So I don't think I've actually even included Ronaldinho in any of my nominations. No, I haven't. So we'll talk you through the ones that I've gone for. Firstly, John Barnes. If you missed my video last week, John Barnes is just the best left mid in the game this year with the lengthy and all that lot. If you want to see my review on him, go watch last week's video. Giovinco, as I've already mentioned, in that front three with Palacio and Di Natale. Don't need to see any more about him. Nedved comes very, very close to getting the left mid spot. I used Nedved for a solid 4 or 5 years. Firstly, as a legend, then as an icon. He's one of the most underrated icons in the game's history, in my opinion. 81 physical, 90 dribbling, 90 passing, 89 shooting, and 85 pace. And the fact that you can now play him at cam and people still don't use him absolutely baffles me. But Nedved, so good. One of the best long shotters in the game. In terms of Neymar cards, I have gone for his prime Barcelona card. This was the one that I used the most. I used to rinse people with Neymar.
He might be through. Neymar! They've got him to score here.
5-star skills back in the day when if you were good at 5-star skills, you could really dominate players. I don't think you can do it as well anymore. They've definitely nerfed skills over the last few years. But back in the early days of FIFA, like I say, 13, 14, 15, 16, you could absolutely wreck people with 5-star skillers, and having a 5-star player back then was so rare, and Neymar absolutely encapsulated that. Palafutra, again, another classic FIFA 15 legend. I think, again, we're getting him this year as a hero, so I'm looking forward to trying him out if that is true. Very, very good card. Again, 5-star weak foot. Really enjoyed using him. Dimitri Payet, I've gone for the Lille version of him, not the West Ham version. The only real thing missing from this card was 5-star skills because, like I say, I used to use Lamella in the left wing spot because of his 5-star skills, but this Payet was so fun to use. Possibly the best free kicks ever on this version of the card. He just scored absolutely everything, but then back then free kicks were a lot easier. Ivan Perisic, he deserved a spot somewhere on this list. I could have put him in the centre mid spot. I could have put him in the cam spot. I'm nominating him in the left mid spot because I would use him as a left mid in a 3-5-2. Whether, again, that was the Bayern Munich versions, the Inter Milan versions, even the Tottenham version this year where I've used him at centre mid, cam, left mid, striker I used him at times. Never really quite enough to get into a Hall of Fame team, and he's not going to make it into the all-time Hall of Fame team. But again, for overall consistency, Ivan Perisic definitely deserves a shout. Marco Reus, again, could have included him as a cam, could have included him as a striker, but for me, the best version of Marco Reus was the FIFA 15 left mid version. Absolutely wrecked people with this. I don't think I need to say any more about the, that Dortmund lineup all the way round, but I absolutely loved Marco Reus, and yeah, deserves his spot on this list. Next to him, I've then gone for Frank Ribery. You will notice that I've actually gone for 2 FIFA 15 Bundesliga left wings. That's because they were both so good that I played them both. I would play a 3-4-3 at times just to get both of these guys in the team. So fun to use. Ribery, probably the best crosser of a ball on FIFA for me. For whatever reason, I could just get to the byline with him, dab, cross, and he'd do these depth little chips that would just always go over the keeper and then just give Lewandowski those easy tap-ins at the back post. Cristiano Ronaldo, again, could have picked 100 different versions of Ronaldo. The reason I've gone for this one is because I actually packed this one from a 5k pack. Just let that sink into you. I packed a hero Ronaldo from a 5k pack. And back then, this card was worth 8 million coins. So that's why he gets his spot over all the other Ronaldo cards. I, of course, sold him, but never really got to use Ronaldo enough. But yeah, loved this card. Loved the 8 million I got from this card. Then I've got Leroy Sané. I sort of ran out of options for left mids in the end. Went for this Sané card because he got in the Hall of Fame for me one year. Although, to be fair, I do really enjoy Leroy Sané cards. It was just worth bringing this one up. And then finally, Heung-min Son. And Heung-min Son is actually the one that's going to get in the team. And you might be wondering, of all the versions of Heung-min Son, you're going for the 76 Bayer Leverkusen version of Heung-min Son. Why? Pure and simply, in FIFA 15, I made what is to this day my favourite ever FIFA team. And it was an all-silver Korean team plus Heung-min Son. This was the most fun. I would literally take this team with some of my mates, go into Division 1, and we would smash everyone with this team. And obviously, being the only gold in the side, Heung-min Son was the standout player.
No, he would have done well to score from that because it wasn't the easiest of chances.
Lee. Well, we might get an update on that injury now from our man Jeff Shreves. Jeff.
He's caught the goalkeeper out with that long-range shot.
And to then see how his career has developed from then, to see him go to Spurs, get those OP Player of the Month cards, get those ridiculous 95, 96 Team of the Season cards. We all know that he's going to be a phenomenal player on EA Sports FC this year. He's one of the cover stars. He's going to get himself some more special cards. So to be sort of there at the start of his career using this card when basically no one even knew he existed, that means an awful lot to me, and that is why this version of Heung-min Son will always be my favourite version of Heung-min Son, and that is why it gets the spot in the all-time Hall of Fame over any other version of Son, because he belongs to the greatest ever FIFA team I have built, and that will never, ever change. And then finally we have the striker. And I'll be honest with you, I could fill this entire squad, all the subs, and all the reserves twice over with all of the nominations for what I could put at striker. And there are going to be some massive absentees from the striker list, even for myself. There are players that, the likes of Ben Yedder, the likes of Carlos Tevez, so many strikers that I could include in here, but I've had to narrow it down to just 12, and then I've had to narrow that 12 down to just 1. And we'll start with Cavani and Falcao. Now, obviously, I mentioned earlier about my front three of Cavani, Falcao, and James. For that reason alone, these two get nominated. And again, I would put them in their own separate Hall of Fame. But sadly, I can only pick one striker. And it would be wrong of me to pick one over the other because they contributed equally the whole season long. This Missy Batshuayi card is possibly the best striker I've ever used. And I mean that. You could pretty much, on an engine, get him 99 rated in every single stat you would want on a striker. The only thing that held him back was the fact that he was 3-star skill and 4-star weak foot. And now he's 4-star skill and 5-star weak foot. And they've never given him a card like this card since, which sucks so much for me because I always wanted another version of Batshuayi like this one. But sadly, it never made it. But even with the 3-star skill, 4-star weak foot, this is probably my favourite ever striker, just in terms of on-field performance. Next to him, I've gone for Calvert-Lewin. This Player of the Month card played something like 400 games for me in FIFA 21 and got 700 goals.
Damn!
That's why he's there. He sort of redefined how I played a striker. I was always one for quick in-behind strikers and then sort of changed that approach because of someone like Batshuayi. And then I adapted that style of play to Calvert-Lewin and he absolutely smashed it. Plus, this was a year that everyone started playing fullbacks at centre-backs. So you had like these 5'7", 5'8" players playing at centre-back, and I had 6'2" Calvert-Lewin with 99 jumping, winning every header and scoring goals for fun. People are idiots at times, and I can capitalise on that. Next up, Di Natale. Again, could easily put him as the man to lead this line, but he just sadly misses out. The final part of that Palacio Giovinco front three. And I've gone for this version over the hero versions. Now, I've absolutely loved the hero versions, but it will never be the same as the original Udinese Di Natale. And I don't care what FIFA do with these future versions of Di Natale. This will always be the best version of Di Natale for me. Seydou Doumbia, again, I could so easily put him as the striker. I did a challenge with this Doumbia card where I had to score a goal in every single minute. And I pulled it off. It took 3.5 months, but I scored a goal in every single minute of a game of FIFA with this Seydou Doumbia card. And like I say, I could pick so many different versions of Doumbia, but I'm going for the USK Moscow one because FIFA 15 was my favourite FIFA. This was my favourite version of Doumbia, and this was the one that I got the achievement with. Ibrahimovic, I could have gone for 2 versions. I could have gone for this Team of the Year version, or I could have gone for the flashback version from a couple of years ago. The reason why I've gone for the 96 is I think because in everyone else's minds, this Ibrahimovic was the best striker in FIFA history. He was absolutely dominant on a level we have never seen since. He was so far clear of every other striker in the game, it wasn't even close. He was like 15 mil extinct at times. He was that good. And there just wasn't a defender on the game that can handle him. When the squad screen loaded up, when you saw this Ibrahimovic, I'll be honest, most people just quit. I didn't, because I'm not like that, but you just knew you were in for a game, and more than likely you were going to lose because this Ibrahimovic was just that good. Jovic, again, just the card that probably came closest to Batshuayi in terms of the all-round stats, and then the fact that he actually did have 4-star skill, 5-star weak foot. Not going to get his spot in the overall team, but deserves a nomination just because of how good this card was. Lautaro Martinez, again, I could have picked several versions of him. I've always been a fan of Lautaro Martinez ever since he came over to Inter Milan. All of his cards on FIFA have been phenomenal. I don't think his ones this year have quite lived up to the ones that he's had over the past couple of years, but I think, again, that's just because the meta has developed so much, so quickly, that when you get Team of the Season cards like this now, they're just pretty standard, which is a shame because I think you do need to have some sort of hierarchy in these games at times, which sadly means the likes of Martinez drop off, but I've loved Martinez's cards over the last few years. I've then gone for Mbappe, just standard gold Kylian Mbappe from this year's FIFA, because he is one of the best strikers ever on FIFA. There is no denying it. He should not be ignored in this conversation because he is just that good. And just to say, oh, it's a standard Mbappe, you can't put him in the all-time Hall of Fame. He should definitely be in the conversation because he's just that good. Alexander Pato, basically the OG Mbappe, the 5-star skill. I think he also had a 5-star weak foot. This card was nuts. He had about... It felt like he had 99 jumping. He won every single header. He was faster than every single player on the game. His dribbling was untouchable. You could link him with the old school Ibra up front as well. Just, I wish his career went the way everyone hoped it would, because we've sadly missed out on what could have been the best FIFA card for 10 to 15 years straight. And sadly, I don't think this original FIFA 10 card will ever be topped, because it just was that good. And then finally, George Weah. He is the man that is going in the team. Just because he was that guy. In FIFA 15, like I say, there weren't many top-end strikers. It was literally Seydou Doumbé, George Weah. And it took until I got George Weah for Doumbé to get out of the team. And the reason George Weah got into the team is because I packed him.
You lucky bastard.
And this was the first time in my life I packed a card that was worth several million coins, and I kept him. And I tell you now, it was the best decision I made in my FIFA career. This card destroyed everyone. Absolutely everyone. This is the best striker ever. I don't care, and I know I said about Batshuayi in terms of his in-game performances were the best ever. And I'll stand by that. In-game, this Batshuayi was better than this George Weah. However, in FIFA 15, this George Weah could do things to defences that no other striker could do. And he absolutely ripped people to shreds, and I'm absolutely gutted we have not seen a George Weah card since. I love what they did with Timothy Weah this year, whereby they gave him the same stats as the old George Weah card. But this is my whole point in regards to the fact that cards these days, you see a card with these stats these days, you're not getting too excited because it's nothing. But in FIFA 15, this card was just an absolute animal. And I love this card. And as much as I want to put Doumbé in here, as much as I want to put Di Natale in here, as much as I want to put Batshuayi in here, this will always be the card for me. My first owner, George Weah, that just made FIFA 15, along with the Korean team spearheaded by Heung-min Son, the best FIFA for me, in my opinion. And that is my Hall of Fame team. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments. Let me know your Hall of Fame team down in the comments. Thank you very much for playing along with me in this video, and thank you for all the support you have given FIFA over the course of this season. And as an Ultimate Team fan, and I don't want to say on behalf of EA, but thank you for playing Ultimate Team, and hopefully we're going to make some brand new memories in EA Sports FC Ultimate Team in the coming years. Thank you very much for watching once again. I will see you at the launch of EA Sports FC.